If you have been waking up feeling stiff and achy with all those aches and pains, like your body isn't responding and recovering the way that it used to, and you're thinking, oh, I feel really old now, and you're wondering, is this just aging? Today's conversation is going to completely change how you think about that, because what if it's not just aging? So today I am joined by an amazing physician, Dr. Scott Stoll. I have enormous respect for Dr. Stoll. He is a physician specializing in longevity. He is a leader in lifestyle and plant-based medicine. And today we are going to be talking about why your body feels stiff and achy after 50, what's actually happening in your muscles and joints, and most importantly, what you can do to feel strong, mobile, pain-free, and honestly, how you can feel 10 years younger. This has been my experience from following the lifestyle medicine suggestions that Dr. Scott Stoll is going to give us today. So without further ado, I'm going to say hello to you, Dr. Scott Stoll.
Well, hello, Sophie. It is such an honor to join you today. Thank you for the kind invitation. And I'm really excited about the topic that you've chosen today.
Fantastic. All right. So let's just dive straight in. So, Dr. Stoll, why do so many women over 50 suddenly go into menopause and suddenly feel stiff and achy? Is this just aging, or is there something else?
No, it's not just aging. Coming out of menopause, as estrogen levels decline, estrogen does some really important things for our musculoskeletal system, our muscles, bones, joints, and our connective tissue. Estrogen actually helps to maintain the elasticity of tissue. And we have this layer in between our connective tissue of hyaluronic acid. It's like jelly that slides between the connective tissue. With declining levels of estrogen, that hyaluronic acid decreases and those layers get closer and closer. And so now they stick and there's some friction and you don't have that smooth slide. Estrogen also is important in maintaining muscle synthesis and regeneration. So you can lose a little bit of muscle mass with menopause. And estrogen is also helpful in maintaining just the health and flexibility, the elasticity of our connective tissue. So with declining levels and lowering that estrogen, the connective tissue loses some of the elasticity and it becomes stiff. That's the estrogen part. Now, as we age, a couple of things also happen. We sometimes don't eat as healthfully as we age, and we'll talk more about how the food also impacts everything that we just talked about. Sometimes we don't sleep as much as we age. And during our sleep, there's a key regenerative window when your body repairs itself. And your brain does the same thing overnight as well. So there's kind of a multitude of things that happen. But for women over 50, estrogen really does make a difference.
And thank you so much for explaining that. And is that why recovery feels so much slower? So it's almost like the change that I noticed when I turned 50, and now, because I've followed all the advice that you're about to give everybody, this is no longer the case for me. But I remember when I turned 50, I was like, oh, I've done something one day, I've done a workout, and I'm really feeling it 3 days later.
Yes, there's a really important thing to understand about our bodies. First, our bodies were designed to recover, repair, regenerate when we provide the right opportunity and the right resources. Now, over time, we can accumulate injury, and your body has this incredible reserve when we're younger that it can draw upon. And small injuries don't seem to really create any problems because we have reserves. By the time we get to 50, we've often depleted our reserves. That level of resiliency is gone, and we've accumulated injury in our connective tissue, in our joints, in our muscles. And so we do begin to feel it, in addition to the lowering of the estrogen levels. And for example, normally our connective tissue slides like this, parallel fiber sliding. With diet, and especially exposures to high meat and high sugar, we get cross-linking. So instead of fibers sliding, they become perpendicular, and now they can't slide as efficiently. That comes from something called advanced glycation end products, AGEs. And the more AGEs that we have in our diet and our lifestyle, the more we get this cross-linking and the more that we feel this aging that's associated with that. So, there's a lot of reasons this happens, but the good news is we're going to talk about, even it's never too late. When you're 50 or 60, as you mentioned, you can begin changing your diet and your lifestyle. We can rebuild that hyaluronic acid. We can repair the connective tissue. Stiffness and achiness can go away. And as you're talking about, the repair recovery cycle gets faster. It can move from 72 hours to 48 hours and even 24 hours after an exercise program.
Scott, it's so interesting because I just did an earlier episode, and everybody, you can go back to that episode. I believe it's episode 10, all about eating for beautiful, radiant skin. And one of the big things that I mentioned towards the end, which is exactly what you're talking about now, is these AGEs, these advanced glycation end products. And what's so interesting, because I understand the mechanism of how these advanced glycation end products literally prematurely age your skin. And so what I'm always saying to women is, look, before you go for the expensive anti-aging serums or procedures, look at your diet, because ingesting these AGEs has a direct impact on prematurely aging your skin. But what I never really correlated that to, which you've done so beautifully just now, is it's not just our skin. Of course, it's not just our facial skin or our skin all over our body. It's actually happening internally as well, and that this is part of the premature aging of those joints and muscles. So thank you for pointing that really important piece out. Scott, I want to ask you, so we're going to get to nutrition because this directly leads us into the nutrition piece. But before we do, if somebody wants to feel stiff less quickly, as far as exercise is concerned, which is something I talk a lot about, and now we hear so much about all this, obviously we need to lift heavy, we need to do our weight training to build lean muscle mass and keep our bones strong, and all these other, mobility and flexibility and whatnot. So before we get to nutrition, can you just very quickly touch on the balance between strength, mobility, and recovery as far as you are concerned?
Yes, absolutely. So as we age, something to be aware of. In the literature, there's a term called sarcopenia, which means that as we age, we're losing muscle mass. And this is related to two primary issues. One is if you don't use it, you lose it. And if we think about people as they age, they do a little less generally. They don't lift as heavy. They're not as engaged in activities, raising families or building things. So we're naturally doing less heavy lifting. And so we lose some of that muscle mass. The second is that it's a metabolic issue. When we are living an unhealthy lifestyle, we have high systemic inflammatory levels, it changes the metabolism of our body, even down to the mitochondria. And for those reasons, we begin to lose the density and the mass of our muscles. And then, as we mentioned earlier, for women over 50, again, it's the decline in estrogen that further contributes to the lack of protein building in muscle. Now, what's important about this, Sophie, is that we lose preferentially fast twitch muscle fibers, the type 2 fibers. And that really puts people at an increased risk for a fall. If you're walking and you happen to catch your toe stepping across a doorway or off a curb, and you step down, it's the fast twitch muscle fibers that would fire in your thigh to prevent you from falling forward and breaking a bone or hitting your head. And so we're losing these fast twitch muscle fibers. And at the same time, as I mentioned earlier, our connective tissue is getting stiffer. We're losing elasticity and we're losing those cross linkages. So to take all of that in context and then to answer your question, we have to say, okay, how can we begin reversing some of those underlying issues? First is that we just need to start doing some heavy lifting. There was a very interesting study where they went into a nursing home and they took people that were frail and elderly, and they put them on 3-rep heavy max lifting weight sets. And they found over the course of 12 weeks, even with muscle biopsies, that their muscle responded to the heavy weightlifting in the same way that somebody 40 or 50 would respond. They also found that their quality of life improved dramatically. People stopped using walkers, falls went down, mood improved because they were lifting heavy weights. So we can take away from all of this that one of the things that's critically important as we're aging is to lift heavy weights, get into a resistance program. And it doesn't have to be metal weights. It could be resistance bands. You can even use your own body to create isometric exercises, but challenging our muscles in a way that causes them to respond by building muscle is really important. And many of those also help to build bone because our bone is alive. And when we're pushing and stressing our muscles, we're also stressing the skeletal system. So this is going to help with osteopenia, osteoporosis as well. Coupling that with 2 other pieces. One is a good night's sleep for recovery. You know, that window between 10 a.m. and 6 a.m. is a critically important window for your body to recover and rebuild itself. Everything is finely tuned overnight to sweep through the body, the cleanup and repair crews, identifying things that have been damaged, things that need to be cleaned up, and assisting the body in repairing things that were injured during the course of the day. This also happens in the brain, that your brain kind of goes through a flush where the CSF flushes the brain of some of the buildup. So that regenerative window overnight is critically important. And then finally, our ability to recover and regenerate after a workout or any really big activity is based upon the antioxidant levels of our diet. The higher the consumption of plants, the more that we expose ourselves to these beautiful chemicals in plants, the antioxidants, the polyphenols, the phytochemicals that flush through our system and begin turning off inflammatory switches and assisting the body actually in repairing the connective tissue. And the tissue becomes more flexible, more pliable, more elastic. And the research has shown that the recovery time from things like delayed onset muscle soreness, which is that achy soreness that you feel after a workout that sometimes seems to go for days, can be cut in half with a higher consumption of these dark colored fruits and vegetables.
Fantastic. Thank you for explaining that. And it just, it's making that connection between the how these fruits and vegetables and polyphenols and such and these antioxidants are the really key piece in the recovery. And Scott, over the years, I work out, I do a lot of resistance training now, and it is night and day since 15 years ago when I changed my diet to be plant rich. Night and day, I felt more achy and old and cranky when I woke up in the morning when I was in my late 40s than I do now, and I'm in my early 60s. So I really want to double click on this nutrition piece, because this is something that you are all about. We're going to talk in a moment about this amazing conference coming up that my listeners and my viewers are going to be able to attend. So we'll talk about that in a moment. But so the role of nutrition in reducing stiffness and repair is massive. So can you explain how a plant-rich or a plant-based approach, and maybe I'd love to even know what your definition of that is, how it can directly support inflammation, joints and recovery, and also it's not just inflammation in our joints or muscles, it's systemic inflammation. And I know, Scott, a lot of women that I work with in this time in my, in their 50s struggle with belly fat and this sort of central adiposity, which, as we now know, is highly inflammatory. So can you just explain all of this to us? I'm going to hand the mic over to you because you are so good at explaining this.
Sure, Sophie, thank you. It's such a good question. We hear about inflammation in so many places, and I think sometimes we don't really understand what it is. At the core, inflammation comes from injury to tissue. And when we damage like a cell membrane, there's an injury, and then the body responds to the injury. Inflammation is normal. If I was walking down the street and I step off a curb and I twist my ankle swells up because it's a normal response to an injury. And what's happening is my blood vessels are opening up, allowing some of the cells to leak out of the blood vessels into the tissue to see the torn connective tissue and start chewing up the loose ends. And then that's followed by, in a couple of days, cells that begin laying down new connective tissue, things like fibroblasts and mobilizing stem cells to the area. It's the repair crew coming in to fix the damage. That's inflammation is normal. And I just want people to understand that, having a normal inflammatory response to an injury is your body's protective and repair opportunity for those things. So when we have a balanced immune system, we have this nice kind of harmony or homeostasis where, if we get an injury, our body repairs it fully, and then it dials back inflammation. So first, to try and understand where inflammation comes from, we have to look at first our diet. Diet is a primary source of inflammatory exposure 3 times a day for most people around the world. When we're eating foods that are high in sugars, high in refined carbohydrates, high in animal products, high in chemicals, we're exposed maybe to chemicals in our environment. All of those things go down, and they're causing micro-level injury at the cell level. And that's where this inflammation is coming from. So it's micro level, and because we're exposing ourselves maybe 2-3 times a day, the inflammatory process never has a chance to go through that arc of acute, repair, turn off, because it's acute, and it's acute, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So we end up having this system-wide inflammatory response, inflammation throughout our entire body, including our brains. There's something called neuroinflammation that is associated with our diet. And the studies show that even after a meal, high in animal products or sugar, we get a spike of inflammation within 2 hours. So this is real-time inflammation. So how do we combat this? 2 ways. First, we turn off the spigot that's bringing in inflammatory foods. So we move away from kind of the typical Western diet that's high in meat, high in refined carbohydrates, high in sugar, and we move towards a diet that is high in anti-inflammatories. And what we're talking about is eating a diet that is rich in plants. And all of the research today, large meta-analyses, multiple randomized controlled trials, overwhelming evidence suggests that eating 10 servings of plants a day provides maximal benefit in your body. And so what's happening when you're eating these plants? We're consuming plants that contain fiber, phytochemicals, antioxidants, nutrients, and all of the macronutrients that your body needs: fats, carbohydrates, and protein. And I just want to make the point that every single plant has all of the amino acids. They are complete. And if you're eating enough servings of plants, you will get all the protein that your body needs. So this plant goes down into your body, and at a number of levels, you're turning off these inflammatory switches. The fiber is digested by the bacteria in your gut, and the bacteria themselves produce these secondary, it's like the byproducts of their consumption of the plants that circulate through your body and turn off key inflammatory switches. The colors, the antioxidants in the fruits and vegetables circulate throughout your body and mitigate inflammation all throughout the body, from the mitochondria to the gut to the brain. They're turning off inflammation, and it's like buckets of water on a fire. They're putting out fires all throughout your body. And finally, on top of that, they're actually turning on the pathways for regeneration and healing. So it's not just a turning off of inflammatory switches. At the same time, they're turning on switches from the DNA all the way up in the tissue that are activating repair and regeneration mechanisms. So it's a very exciting opportunity when we understand that 3 times a day, we can turn off the inflammatory switch and we can turn on the regenerative switch by simply adding lots of plants to our plates.
And, ladies, that is when I talk about, feeling vibrant and 10 or 20 years younger. This is exactly what Dr. Stoll is talking about, because to me, it's like, as you said, it's such an exciting opportunity. We have to eat anyway. We have to eat 3 meals a day or 2 meals a day, and snacks and beverages, all that count. And what if that is an opportunity to dial down this inflammation, but not only that, but to really bring back energy and vibrancy, the kind that you might not have experienced for many, many years. Dr. Stoll, one thing I remember when I interviewed you is a few years ago now, and I'll never forget this. I think it was a live stream, and somebody came on and said, well, what do you think about, because we're talking about, I know you're a huge proponent in terms of lifestyle medicine of adopting a plant-based dietary pattern. And I think somebody said, well, what about if I was 80-20? And I remember you saying, well, and you had such a brilliant answer. You said, well, it depends what you want. It depends how you want to feel. Do you want to just click on that just very quickly?
Sure. This comes out of the idea of moderation that we hear so often in the nutrition field. Just eat moderately for health. And so, first, there is no definition of moderation. Everybody's level of moderation is different, and moderation evolves over time based upon what we determine to be kind of a new normal. So in my experience, there really is no such thing as moderation. And it really is up to every individual. Everybody has the freedom to choose how they want to live. And so I don't ever want to dictate that. I want to respect the autonomy, the individuality, and the freedom of every single person. I want to educate people so they understand the benefits of going from 80% to 90% to 100%. And through the informational education process, they might say, gosh, if I can get that much better, or I can reverse that disease or prevent that in my life, why wouldn't I go to a 90 or 100%? And the other thing that we have to really understand, all of us have lived in this kind of Western world. Most of us grew up on a westernized diet. We have exposures to toxins that were not present, 150 years ago. The average person today has 200 to 300 chemicals in their fat that we measure. And that's not counting the exposure to more than 11,000 PFAS chemicals that we don't measure in our tissue that are inflammatory agents. And so the opportunity for us to create maximal protection, to optimize the function of all of the cell pathways in our body, from our DNA to the blood vessels, to the microbiome, to the powerhouses of the cell, the mitochondria, to repairing our connective tissue, to stimulating the growth of new muscle, preventing, reversing heart disease, preventing dementia, preventing cancer, knowing that at least 40% of people in their lifetime will have a diagnosis of cancer. All of that comes through excellence in our diet. And this is not about putting a burden of perfectionism on ourselves. This is striving to do better. There's a better opportunity to live more vibrantly. And so it's really this kind of exciting, impassioned vision of a life that is filled with more energy, more vitality, feeling less stiff, recovering faster, feeling stronger, being able to go and pursue your dreams, to connect with people in meaningful ways, to steward and leave behind a legacy, because we recognize that the food that we put in our bodies has a healing, regenerative opportunity 3 times a day. So I see the plate as a plate and a powerful opportunity for regeneration and healing, and not just moderation.
Beautifully said. So we're just going to wrap it up now, and I'm just going to ask you some rapid fire questions as we wrap this up. So for everybody who's watching, what's one thing to stop doing today? Put you on the spot here. Oh, we've lost you. We've lost your sound.
There we go. I don't know how it got muted. One thing to stop doing today is blaming yourself. I think that's really important. I think it's important to give yourself as much grace to love yourself as much as possible, because you can love yourself into better health.
That is beautiful. Hang on a second. What is one thing to start doing today?
One thing to start doing today is putting more plants on your plate. It is the single greatest opportunity to bring health and vitality into your life.
Biggest myth about aging and pain?
The biggest myth is that aging results in pain. And the biggest opportunity is to understand that changing your lifestyle can flip that on its head.
Scott, Dr. Stoll, this is why your work is so important. And Dr. Stoll works tirelessly in so many different arenas of life, in helping people, inspiring people, workforces, individuals, putting conferences together to spread this word, the word that, bottom line, if you could add another 8 to 10 healthy years to your life, would you? And Dr. Stoll, thank you from my heart to yours for the incredible work that you do. Now, everybody, I'm going to talk to you very quickly about this incredible conference coming up. It is called The Power of the Plate. It's taking place in San Diego, but there are virtual tickets available. And I want every single one of you to go and grab yourself a virtual ticket. So with a virtual ticket, you can attend all the sessions in the conference. You have a year to be able to enjoy and educate yourself. And I think the really key thing that Dr. Stoll said just a moment ago was, he said, when you have the education, when you understand what is happening in your body, when you understand the pathways and what is actually going on, it changes. It's almost like you don't need willpower anymore. Once I educated myself some 15 years ago, I'm like, oh, I understand now. I understand on so many different levels. So now why wouldn't I take care of myself in this way? So this is how you are going to educate yourself. Dr. Stoll, you have some incredible speakers in the field, some of the luminaries in this field who are going to be doing incredible panels and discussions. And anyway, all this to say is I am dropping the link to register in the description, whether you're listening on the podcast, whether you're watching on YouTube. You can go click on that link right now, get your ticket. It could be one of the greatest gifts that you give yourself this year. So don't miss out on it. It is coming up. All right. So any last minute words, anything that you want to add to that before I let you get on with your busy life, Dr. Stoll?
No, thank you so much, Sophie, for this opportunity. And thank you for helping point people to this conference. You know, it is the power of the plate. And it's a conference that is designed to inspire people to understand the interconnectedness of our decisions around what we put on our plate every day, not just to transform our lives, but the opportunity to transform the world that we're stewarding for the next generation. And as you said, inspired people become agents of transformation. Inspiration leads to transformation, and information is the mechanism by which that happens. So I thank you, and I hope to see all of you virtually at the conference. And next year, we'll have a really big announcement around the conference. So please stay tuned. Thank you, Sophie. It's been an honor being with you.
Thank you so much. And I look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks at the conference. I will be there ready to learn and soak up all that inspiration. Thank you so much. All right, everybody, thanks for listening. I hope you got a lot out of this. Get your ticket for the conference. Bye-bye. I'll see you next time.